Okay, just 3 items to report on for City Council on July 18th. The Wagers Dairy subdivision, which you recommended approval, was approved. They made significant changes, as you recall, to what they were first denied for, and they met with the neighbors and the concerns that the neighbors had, they tried to address. And so the City Council felt like they'd made every effort they could, and they approved it. The second one was Bodel Farms subdivision. That's off of Madison. And that was a pretty simple one. It's 20 single-family homes. And that one was approved as you recommended. And then the last item was not a public hearing, but was a request for reconsideration of a multi-story conditional storage at District 208. If you recall, they on that southeast side of the building, they had proposed storage units for 140,000 square feet of that side of the building. Oh.
Just finish. You won't mind waiting.
All right. Well, I will finish real quick. And so the 140,000 square feet, City Council approved 60,000 square feet, and there was a reconsideration request for 80,000 square feet, and that was denied. So Councilman Haverfield, I jumped in front of you.
Oh, that's okay. I was just listening in and I thought, well, if you're giving my report, that's fine.
Anything you would like to add?
Well, it was going to be brief. Actually, it was kind of fun. I got to be mayor for the evening as Mayor Debbie was at home celebrating with her family. But as far as the consent agenda, we had one final plat approval that was on the agenda for that evening, a Sunnyvale West. So it was approved by consent, 58 single-family detached units and 10 common lots. The new business, only one that I thought was of note, there was a request for reconsideration by Rhino Holdings Group. They wanted to increase the amount of conditioned storage in the Karcher Mall remodel, backed up to their original request. It was denied. So they're allowed 60,000 square feet of conditioned storage. They wanted 80. The only other items that I thought I would mention, there were 3 annexation and zoning requests that were public hearing items. They were all approved. Well, actually 2 that were approved. There was one that was asked for a continuance to the August 1st. I'm sorry. So there was just the 2 that were approved. One in the Valley View School District for 68 single-family detached dwelling units and 8 common lots. And then one that's in the Nampa School District, 20 single-family detached dwelling units and 2 common lots. So beyond that, it was a pretty straightforward evening. We were done early, so I'll let Rodney fill you in on anything else that he might have seen that evening that I missed.
Well, thank you very much.
You bet. You have a great evening.
You too.
Bye.
Okay, Rodney, staff communication.
Madam Chair and Commissioners, this is our time for reporting on our density report. So this is the second quarter. As you remember, at the fourth quarter, we'll do a yearly update and give a lot more detail, but this is just an update. And you have it in your packet, the map that I provided. Can you move? Oh, there we go. Thank you. So actually, this shows last quarters on the map, and I just wanted to show you the difference between the preliminary plats from last quarter, and that's a year, right? So 4/1 to 3/31, that's a year. And then the update is this one. So you see those in red that were changes from the previous report, those 4 areas. And again, we're seeing the same kind of trends. Where they're going, to the north, to the southeast, and to the west. But we have also seen a little more to the east, which hasn't, we're not going beyond Happy Valley there, but we are getting those ones to the south of Amity and just west of Happy Valley. So those are the preliminary plats. Just a reminder, preliminary plats could be several years out. But here's a little closer view, and I'm happy to look at them specifically if you want to. Again, kind of all over the place with preliminary plats. And then there's the specific list of projects. Multifamily, of course, is not necessarily reflective of all of the multifamily that's developed in the city, because you may not need to subdivide a property to get the multifamily. And then here's final plats from this last quarter, and then here's the new quarter. Quite a bit more. And I didn't want to highlight all the red because highlight them all, the changes in red, because they would be all over the place. So pretty significant change there. Just kind of all over, we're seeing final plats as a result of preliminary plats that we've had in the past. So the northern look, the southern look at final plats. And here are all of those approved. Interesting to note, multifamily units, final plats are at 0 for this last year. Single family units, 1,560. And then the short plats, they're small, primarily within the city boundaries, internal to city boundaries. Pretty minimal. We only have 8 single family units, but here we do have 23 multifamily units as part of the short plat. And that is it. I did want to give you a quick update on when you will see code changes. September 13th is when we plan to bring those code changes back to you. Thank you for those who attended the council workshop and your comments. We have gone over those recommendations from City Council and what we heard, and we're going to be bringing back design review changes as was proposed by City Council and directed to staff to do. So that'll be on September 13th. There's going to be, when we implemented such a large code change, when we did our major rewrite last year, we start implementing it and we just have to tweak things here and there. And so that's what most of this is, except for the design review. That's a significant change. So we'll provide those details on the 13th.
Okay, thank you. Okay, we have a consent agenda.
I move that we approve the consent agenda.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to approve the consent agenda. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. All right, and we are past 6, so we'll go straight into public hearings. So public hearing number 1 for annexation and zoning to RD for 76 North Happy Valley Road has been continued. Well, we have to continue it, correct? We need to, they're asking to be continued to October 25th, 2022. So we need a motion to continue that.
So moved.
Second.
I'm surprised, didn't
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to continue public hearing item number 1 until October 25th, 2022. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Action item number 2 has been withdrawn, but it's going to be coming back before us. And so is there anybody here to speak on number 2? Madison Ranch Estates? Okay. All right, so that one we'll see again. Okay, public hearing number 3. Do we have an applicant here for Florida and Nectarine in Hawaii? Yes? No, they're not here?
Look like it.
Want me to go on? We'll skip. Okay. All right, public hearing number 4, we need to continue it as well. And number 5.
So moved?
To August 9th,
To August 9th.
both of them, right?
Oh, yes.
We just do those in one motion.
Is that okay to do in one motion? Okay.
I'll second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to continue action items 4 and 5 to August 9th, 2022. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Public hearing number 6 is conditional use permit for a non-commercial kennel license for 3 dogs on 4th Street. Do we have the applicant? Come on up and tell us your name and address for the record and tell us what you want to do.
My name is Shannon Mock. Address is 2019 4th Street South, Nampa, 83651.
Can you pull the microphone down a little bit so we can hear you a little better?
Sorry, I'm not used to this. I'm just here to obtain a permit so that my roommate and I are allowed to have the 3 pets that we have.
Okay, and what's spurring this? You just got a 3rd dog or?
Yes, this is my roommate Diane Day. She moved in May, 2nd week of May. She does have a small squirrel-sized dog who's not used to being outside as well. So we're kind of getting him acclimated to that. And he has been causing some barking and commotion.
Okay,
And we have had complaints, and I've taken steps to remedy the situation. I've purchased a sonar stop bark. All the dogs now have bark collars. They're not shock collars. They beep and then vibrate. After that happened, I hadn't had any other complaints, so I assumed that those were working.
okay,
And there has been more complaints since then, so,
okay. Well, we'll hear from staff and then public hearing, and we may have questions for you at the end.
okay.
All
Thank
right.
you very much.
Thank you. Parker.
Thank you, Madam Chair and Commissioners. The action requested is for a conditional use permit for a non-commercial kennel license for 3 dogs. This is in a medium-density area, zoned RD. The surrounding land uses are all single-family with the East Side Park to the south. Here's a street view picture of the property. It's a little outdated from Google. I think we're all aware of the requirement for non-commercial kennel license, more than 2 dogs, at least 6 months of age. The conclusions of law for a conditional use permit, the use needs to be compatible with and not adversely affect the livability of the abutting properties. The agency comments, I submitted the animal control history with the staff report, and that's in there. They visited the property on a few occasions regarding a dog at large, and then dogs barking. We can go into that in detail if you need to, but all that's in the staff report. There's that on the screen. We can come back to it if needed. The subject property is all surrounded by single-family homes adjacent to the park. As of the report, as of today, there have been no comments submitted.
Okay, we'll have public hearing after staff talks, and you'll get a chance to come up and.
The commission would need to determine whether the proposed use would negatively impact the public and potentially add mitigating conditions on that. Here are the recommended conditions if you choose to approve. And there is a potential motion for you, and I will stand for any questions.
Walker, did you speak to the applicant about the conditional use permit and what the criteria is for withdrawing that or pulling it back?
Madam Chair and Commissioner, I did not review the process for revoking a CUP, no.
There was several comments in here that, I thought maybe it might be a good idea that they understood the ramifications of not following
Sure.
through properly.
I can certainly cover that now. If upon complaint, perhaps the city can go back and notify and that we will hold another public hearing, at which time this body will determine whether to uphold that conditional use permit or revoke it at that time.
You understand that, ma'am?
Does that mean if you were to approve it today, it could be denied later?
Yes, if there's more complaints, then it would come back before us and we could revoke the conditional use permit. Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Okay, let's go to public testimony. Do we have sign-up sheets? We have no Daniel. Can't, all right, anybody here to speak for this?
Speak for it? Mm-hmm. I,
Name and address for the record.
Diane Day, 2019 South 4th Street, Nampa. When we first moved in, I didn't realize that you could only have 2 dogs in the city of Nampa. My dog got out, and so officer did call me, did explain to me the process, got called again for barking. Officer Alvarado did express to me that she sat and observed for 20 minutes, and that what he was doing was called provoked barking, because we do live across the street from the park, and there are people passing by, that it was called provoked barking, and that he wasn't sitting barking constantly, is that what I was told by the officer.
Okay.
We have gotten the bark collars, like my roommate has stated. I have looked into more, but I did not want to invest any more money, because if I have to move, because I can't, I'm sorry, if I can't keep my dog, then I'll be moving. And so I didn't want to invest any more money into more options to get his barking under control as people pass by, until we either got approved or denied, because they're expensive options. And this is an expensive process as well. So I am willing to do whatever it takes to get his barking under control, and do realize that it could be revoked if it was approved. So,
All right,
thank you.
Anybody else that would like to speak for this? Against? Come on up. Remember to give your name and address for the record.
Right. I'm Terry Henderson, and I am Shannon's neighbor,
And your ad-
adjacent neighbor.
And your address, please.
It is 407 21st Avenue South.
Thank you. Okay.
Speaking of expenses, I did a big move. I moved from Maine to be close to my grandchildren, my kids. And I purchased the property next to Shannon was last June. I've been there about a year. Of course, when you buy a piece of property, there's things that you don't know necessarily. And I don't have anything against dogs. I have a dog myself. But the dog barking sort of precludes Shannon's new roommate. There's been dog barking off and on pretty consistently since I've been there. I have no qualms about a kennel. Maybe you can answer a couple questions. When you apply for a non-commercial kennel, are there guidelines different than for a commercial kennel?
It's just to allow them to have more than 2 dogs, and they're asking for 3. So it's so that it can be licensed and be in the city legally, 3 dogs.
I commiserate with Shannon and her roommate's problem that they both work. And I worked myself for 50 years. I'm retired now, I'm 73. And so, as you know, you have to make some adjustments if you have animals, or for that matter, even if you have a child at home and you have to go to work. There's always adjustments. I am sensitive to that, but at the same time, I'm also sensitive to not being able to fully enjoy as they want to enjoy their dogs. I feel really bad being here about this. I don't like to be in this role. I like Shannon. We've gotten along, and as you know, over the course of time, when you live by a neighbor, it's really important to be able to have a good rapport with your neighbor. Whether we have to replace the fence between us, there's always something, right? So I'm not here to wish harm on their situation. I'm here because the barking situation precluded the application for the kennel.
Okay.
Okay? And in a commercial kennel, usually there's someone there that monitors or is available if there's a problem with behavior of dogs. In this situation, I have to listen to the barking. The lots are very narrow and long. And my bedroom window is 9 feet from where the dogs are. That's like having a dog in the next room, okay? So prior to your little guy coming, her son lived there with a dog. So there's been 3 dogs there for a year. And your son's dog barked too. Lily used to bark too then. And Ruby, Lily isn't barking much anymore. But Ruby and the little dog barked. So Shannon, in all fairness to me, when her son moved out and took one barking dog with, which left her 2 dogs, she chose to rent to someone with another dog that turns out to be another barker. And I'm the one that's home. I'm the one that listens to the dogs. I have talked to you about the dogs to try to find out what kind of solution. And there have been, I think you told me correctly that the little dog can't have a bark collar on it. He has one on, but he doesn't. But they don't really work. I haven't called in every time the dogs bark. I could call in almost every day. We're not talking a little woof when someone comes to the door. We're talking barking when anyone walks by the sidewalk to the park with another dog. When I go out my back door, a lot of times in the morning, they hear my door open and there's barking. And I've yelled over the fence, told them to be quiet. Other neighbors have too. But I just want the barking solved.
Okay.
I would like to live in some enjoyment too, just like they want to enjoy their dogs. So I'm wondering, what is the solution to this, okay? I'm not asking her to get rid of her dogs or you to move out. I'm asking to have the same enjoyment
Sure.
that they're enjoying with their dogs.
Okay. Well, we're here to decide if they can have 3 dogs, and if they violate that conditional use permit, then they'll lose
Because
that.
a
And
kennel license doesn't fix the barking.
no, it doesn't. That's going to have to be handled with animal control. And if it continues, and if we approve the conditional use permit, they will
Well, I
lose
did
it.
call them yesterday for information when the dogs are barking from 7 o'clock in the morning till about 11 o'clock. And they called you, right?
Ma'am, I need you
Yesterday?
to address us.
Oh,
You're,
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm just trying to get
Right. okay,
everything straight. And I was told that I would have to buy a tape recorder by the officer and actually record the dogs. I don't feel comfortable with that. I don't feel like I want to become a policeman. I don't want to record on her property and her things. That's really isn't my, I don't want to take time out of my day. I don't
Okay.
really want to be in that position. But there could be other things, like maybe a fence where the dogs don't see through the park. I don't know how that fixes things when I go out my back door for barking and things like that. But that's all I have to say.
Okay.
And truly, I don't really like being in this position because I like to have nice neighbors, and I'm hoping that Shannon and I can, in some way, this could be figured out. But I'm not going to live with barking dogs for another year.
All right, thank you. Is there anybody else that are here to testify on this? Anybody want to ask the applicant any questions?
I was going to ask if the colors work, but they already answered that question.
So they're not working. So approving the conditional use, well, we got to close public hearing.
Madam Chair, I'd give the applicant an opportunity to respond.
Okay. Do you want to come on up and refute anything or plead your case? Is sounding like your bark colors aren't,
Terry and I have spoke, and after we spoke, we did get the bark collars on the dogs. I feel bad, I should have followed up with her to see if it was resolving the problem, when obviously it isn't. My two dogs don't typically bark when I'm home, but I have noticed a difference that when I do pull in my driveway, since they've had the bark collars, they're not barking waiting for me to get into the patio. That barking has stopped. So in my mind, I'm thinking they're working. And I hadn't heard anything otherwise that they weren't. I do know that they haven't worked on her small dog. So we have been looking into something else. But if they're, like I said, they're not the shocker ones because I didn't want to go to that extreme. But, if it's something I have to do, then that's what we have to do. It's very hard because her and I work full time, and I know that those kind of treatments have to be monitored. And, you have to be there to shock them when they're barking, and I'm not. So I'm not sure if that's going to be the
that
solution.
a bark color did its thing when they barked? It's supposed to respond to
It electrocutes them when they bark.
Yeah, I didn't want to go to that extreme. That's why I got the ones that I did. And like I said, I felt like they were working. The neighbor to the left of me said that they hadn't been barking as often since they've got the bark collars on. He did say if somebody's walking, I live on a corner lot and there is a park literally right there. So people are often, early in the morning, in the evenings, they're walking their dogs. And that is probably when most of the barking is happening, but I don't know.
Is there a way to cover the windows so they can't see the people walking by?
Cover the what?
Windows, like close the blinds so the dogs can't see? Or they're
They're
outside? Oh, they're
outside,
outside, okay.
They're outside, they have a doggy door.
Okay.
But, so the first time I got a complaint, the officer actually said she watched and they did bark as people were walking their dogs, but I'm on a corner lot. So she's like, that's a long way, because they're running the whole fence and around the
So,
corner.
excuse me, just for clarification, when the officer was watching, the colors were not on the dogs at the time?
Correct.
Okay.
But a year ago, the first time that I spoke to about the barking, and that's before Diane came to my home, she said that the dog's barking that whole length, it is pretty excessive, So we actually closed off from the right side of my house and stopped it. So they couldn't go to the front fence anymore. And as of recently, I actually had a 6-foot cedar fence. I've got it on both sides. So there's about 15 foot of black wrought iron fence, which unfortunately is on the park side, that they can, they can see out. And even thinking if I were to put cedar fence along there, they can still hear, see, smell through the slats in the fence. So if they see a dog, they do bark. Like I said, when I'm home, they're not barking. I don't know what they're doing while I'm at work if somebody's not communicating that with me.
Is there any way, just a suggestion, maybe even put a recording device in your home while you're gone and see how excessive it might be? And, you know, someone who makes a complaint, I would imagine it's incumbent upon that complainant with the evidence that there's this excessive barking going on. I think that's what the officer was telling the neighbors, but
Yeah.
maybe on your end also.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I'm willing to do what I can. I, obviously, you know, Terry and I have gotten along great since she first moved in, other than this situation. I don't want to live in a community where my neighbors are not happy with me or my dogs. That's just not me. And I'm willing to do what I can to make it better. And obviously, I don't want you to approve it just to have it turn around and get denied, because I'm not willing to do anything about it, so.
Okay.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you.
And just for clarification, I'm sorry, the process for a revocation of a CUP goes through a process. It's just not one and done type of a thing. A complaint will be made, could be made, and then it'll come back here for the commission to hear it again, basically. So there is a process to that. It's not just yank it and be done.
I would entertain a motion to close public hearing.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to close public hearing. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, public hearing is closed.
I have just a couple of clarification points.
Okay.
Is this something I said?
Partially. Not that you were incorrect, but that we are in the process of code changes, and one code change that we are looking at is the CUP revocation process. We are looking at, upon complaint, it's automatically revoked, and they would have to come in and reapply to have it reinstated, instead of reverse, where we get a complaint, we hold a hearing, and then it's revoked.
Okay.
So they'd have to pay that fee if they
Correct.
get one complaint to try for a new CUP.
We would investigate it to make sure that that complaint is merited. But yeah. The second point being, this is a conditional use permit for a kennel license, so you have the opportunity to add those conditions, not necessarily just approve it or deny it, but to look at those mitigating conditions to add.
Okay, thank you.
It sounds like she's willing to work on it. She's been working on it, and she wants to be a good neighbor, I think, so.
Well, as a former dog owner and cat owner and bird owner and everything else, animal owner, I empathize with them, and I understand the neighbor's complaint, because where I live now, even though I'm retired and don't have any pets, my neighbors still have pets, mostly dogs, and they had the same thing happen. And their solution was just leave them in the house during the day. Not the best thing for the dog, but it may be the best thing for the neighbors and neighborhood.
Yeah.
You know, it's freezing cold, 10 degrees below zero out there. Nobody lets the dog out then. So maybe you need to find another way to, or maybe have a neighbor, take them to a neighbor's house, and, you know, give them $1 a day or something to watch your dogs. Well, you know, or $50 a day, does that work for you? But you need to be creative, I guess, is what we're saying, because, you know, you're gonna lose your dogs, and I would not like to lose my dogs when I had them. But you gotta be understanding of your neighbor's situation too. I mean, you know, you gotta work up something. It's not just to get along with your neighbor, just to get along in society. I'm gonna vote for approval, but if it comes back, I won't be so generous.
So are you making a motion, Steve?
Yeah. Well, everybody else want to speak?
No, I'm kind of along the lines of you know, they deserve a chance. They've expressed the idea that they want to get along with their neighbors.
Yeah.
They want to correct the problem, and so I think that they deserve a chance to do that, and so I'm all for.
I think so too. Anybody else?
So Parker, when that code change comes into effect, does that affect all CUPs or CUPs after that code change, or?
Commissioner, it applies to all CUPs. I mean, some CUPs, like CUPs for multifamily, we can't necessarily revoke because they're already built. But all the ones that have to do with uses that aren't built, really.
But there's none of them that have already been approved will be grandfathered into that code change.
It'll affect everything, yeah. This is about the revocation process, not about the
Any particular?
installment of
And-
those CUPs.
Is it one complaint or two?
It's just based on one complaint.
Okay.
But, you know, speaking the devil's advocate here, what if somebody just hates their neighbor and they make the complaint because they don't like the neighbor, it has nothing to do with the dog? That's
The
not-
complaint does have to be merited, and staff will investigate that.
Okay, all right. As long as you don't just take one person's word for it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Anybody else? Madam Chair, I move to approve the conditional use permit for a non-commercial kennel license for 3 dogs in a RD zoning district at 2019 4th Street South for Shannon R. Moak, with all conditions of staff and conclusions of law.
I'll second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to approve this CUP. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, I got to read this to you. Conditional use permits approved by Planning and Zoning Commission will become effective 15 calendar days from the date of this hearing unless an appeal has been filed with the Planning and Zoning Department with the appropriate fee. No action should be taken by the applicant on a CUP until the appeal period has concluded. The applicant must confirm with Planning and Zoning staff there have been no appeals. We're not saying she has to get rid of her dog for 15 days, just, it's like, so, you know, but you just need to check in 15 days and make sure nobody has filed an appeal. Somebody can file an appeal that says, we don't agree with this, and they have to come before us and say why they don't agree, yeah.
Well, the appeal would go to,
If we go to city council, yeah. They'd go over us and go right to city council.
there's that waiting period just in case there might be somebody out there. If no one's, check with staff to make sure nothing's been filed and.
Yep. All right, good luck with that.
Motion.
Okay, do we have the applicant here for number 3 now? Hello.
Thank you for your flexibility. My name is Erin Anderson with the Housing Company. Really appreciate the opportunity to be here to talk about the core apartments. We're applying for a conditional use permit. Let me see if I got the clicker going here.
Oh, yeah, we need your address for the record, please.
My address is 2238 North of Stairway in Meridian.
The left and right arrows, it takes a second.
Oh, okay. I've had this problem before where it takes more than a second. In which case,
Not turned off.
there we go. Okay, so a little bit of background on the Housing Company before I get into the project. The Housing Company is a nonprofit. We were organized in 1990 with the mission to address underserved populations, specifically in the area of inadequate supply of affordable, decent rental housing within the state of Idaho. And we do have one project outside of this in a neighboring state, but primarily our focus is in Idaho. We play an active role in bringing affordable housing resources to areas of the state that are currently not being adequately served. With the recent market that tends to be just about everywhere in Idaho. It's really, as everyone knows, it's really just a crisis right now statewide. Through local and public and private partnerships, we've been able to bring creative housing solutions solutions to areas struggling with insufficient housing. Our goal is to partner with local government and other interested parties to solve local housing needs. We've developed, this is a little bit outdated information, we have over 1,000 units and 2 dozen affordable rental communities. The housing company provides professional property management. So we manage, we have on-site managers, we also develop and we own these properties for the long term. We have developments in Moon Valley Apartments in Star. We just recently opened Canyon Terrace here in Nampa, and so that's very close by and local on Garrity. And we have Hazel Park in Caldwell, and we also have Sunset Landing under construction in Caldwell. So I think staff may be also getting into the report a little bit more after this, or was that when I showed up late? Did you already do that?
Nope.
Oh, okay.
You just skipped you.
Okay, all right. So I know they're gonna get into more detail, but our development concept is a 3-story, 74-unit apartment building. We have 14 one-bedrooms, 38 two-bedrooms, and 22 3-bedrooms. This is on East Florida Avenue and 12th Avenue. It's right kind of wedged between the D.L. Evans Bank, there's the Starbucks, the Epic Shine Car Wash over there, a Carl's Jr., and then on the east side is single-family residences. We have met with city staff and we've had our neighborhood meeting following the CUP requirements. We did not have very many people show up to the neighborhood meeting. Very few comments, mostly just asking general questions about the project. I didn't hear any specific concerns at that meeting. We originally submitted our CUP request with a higher unit count, and then were informed that the parking requirements had changed, so we did go back and add additional parking to meet the new parking requirements, which added additional guest parking and the covered parking for your new requirement. This is just a little bit of information about affordable housing. The first pie chart kind of shows a snapshot of the demographics that are served in the housing that we develop. And some people are surprised that there's a really large percentage of people in the labor force. And so we really look at this as workforce housing first and foremost. This development is primarily serving folks around 60% of the area median income. And so the 2022 census data, which tends to lag about 2 years behind, indicates that that means a 4-person household would be at $50,520. Just to give you a rough idea of kind of who we're serving. This just gives a few examples of, the range of different people, like from single people to families. We did a market study. It's showing overwhelming demand. There are 5,367 income appropriate households in the market area that would qualify. So the demand is huge. I'm not going to go through this in detail, but if you're interested in the details on the rent structure, I do have a chart in there for you, as well as our operating expenses. And there's a chart that shows, essentially showing that all of our cash flow is utilized up through, from a first mortgage and subordinate debt. and there's very little cash flow on these developments, and because we're doing this as a mission-based operation. Thought I'd briefly mention the sources, even though this is a planning commission, just for background information, more or less. So the project has a conventional first mortgage. The home loan is a source through the Idaho Housing and Finance Association. The sponsor loan is the housing company equity. The Housing Trust Fund is another type of funding through the Idaho Housing and Finance Association. It's a federal resource. The Workforce Housing Trust Fund of $3.7 million is really important. That's a one-time resource that's available to Idaho that came through the Recovery Act. So these are ARPA funds that went to the state, and the state's now in the process of allocating those to communities for workforce housing. And so we're really hoping we can be successful in an application for those funds that's due this fall. We have deferred developer fee of $650,000. We requested $350,000 of CDBG from the city of Nampa. In talking with Matthew Jamison just today, he informed me that it's likely that the contribution there that could be supported would be $50,000, not $350,000. He called me right before this meeting, part of the reason I was running behind. So we're gonna be looking to come up with another source for the other $300,000 there. The idea behind that CDBG is that it would allow us to generate points on the Workforce Housing Trust Fund application, which would provide local match and local government support points because it's gonna be a competitive process. So it would help us leverage that $3.5 million. So I mentioned the CDBG we applied for. There's kind of a question of, would it be possible to reduce impact fees or a city contribution to pay impact fees? I've seen some other communities do that for affordable housing. I know that's not what this body considers, probably more of a city council question, but wanted you to have all the information. Our schedule for this project is that we're applying for the zoning and we have the CUP application in process. The application for funding goes to IHFA August 5th for the majority of the funds. They announce awards in November. Then there will be another application round for the Idaho Workforce Housing Trust Fund in the fall. That's not on this calendar. There's a building permit application anticipated next winter, and then we hope to start construction by next spring. Really appreciate your time. Welcome any questions, and I'll hand it over to staff for some of the details.
Just a quick question. This application for financing that's on that slide right before that one, I would imagine a lot of that is going to be predicated on whether the CUP application is successful.
So the CUP just needs to be in process. It needs to be approved by the time the project moves forward. They do require zoning, but with the caveat that they do allow us to apply with the CUP in process. So the CUP doesn't have to be approved before August 5th.
I have a few questions. You've done these before, not new to you.
Right.
Do you have a resident manager on hand, a maintenance person on hand?
Yes, we have probably 30 people that are on the sites between property management on-site staff that do the regular management and the maintenance side. So at this property, with the size of it, it would probably be a full-time person for each.
Okay.
Probably a full-time maintenance and a full-time property manager. if not a full-time property manager, part-time maintenance person.
How long does, say if I apply and, and I get a unit, how long would I typically stay? Do I stay here until I can afford a house, or do
Yeah.
I stay here forever?
You could stay as long as you
Qualify?
meet as long as you're following your lease agreement. So, as long as you're not doing anything that violates the terms of the lease, you could stay as long as you would
What
like.
if I get a promotion and I was making $35,000 a year before, and now I'm making $70,000 a year? Would I still qualify?
Yes,
Okay, once you're in, you're in.
once you're in, you're in.
Okay. Apartments, when you say low end, everybody thinks that the place is going to be trashed in no time.
Right,
Common misconception. It's just as nice as any place else, but still you get this misconception.
right.
So the people that are behind you, there's a house is already there. What will you do to mitigate their observing what's going on? Will there be a fence of some type? Will a chain link fence, wood fence, vinyl
Yes.
fencing?
Fence and landscaping.
Fence and
Would be the
landscaping?
plan.
Okay.
Typically 7-foot vinyl
7-foot
fence.
vinyl.
Yeah, that's been our most common
Well, it's better than a
recently.
6 because most people can look over a 6-foot, but you can't a 7-foot.
Right, right. So that'd be most likely what we would do. And then, doing the best we can with landscaping buffers and creating an attractive,
And you also mentioned
Distance.
exterior security cameras, which I think is a good idea. How many of those would you have in an application like this? Is it one per building, one per every 20
no,
feet?
it'd be
or-
more than one for sure. I would say somewhere maybe between 5 and 10.
Okay. And who monitors that? Anybody, or is it just recorded, or they don't even record it?
It's closed circuit cameras with, usually everything gets recorded on tapes that we can then pull up and look at ourselves.
So does the
That's-
resident manager or the
Yeah, the
manager?
resident manager would then do that.
Okay,
Yeah,
all right.
yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, Christie.
Thank you.
Madam Chair and Commissioners, Christy Watkins, Principal Planner for the City of Nampa. The action requested before you tonight is approval or denial of the conditional use permit for a multifamily residential project in a BC zone on the southeast corner of 12th Avenue Road and Florida. The lot size is 3.189 acres. It is zoned BC currently. It is surrounded by RML and BC zoned properties. She kind of described some of the uses there: single-family, multifamily, car wash, bank, restaurants, those kinds of things. So services are immediately available to this property. In March of 1998, this was rezoned from RP and RML to BC with a development agreement for a United Heritage Mutual Life Insurance Company. That project was never completed. In 2009, there was a comprehensive plan amendment where it was included into the NNU district, so that shows you its proximity to the NNU. In April of 2002, that's when they came in to have the pre-app meeting. The ordinance and the development agreement that were attached for United Heritage didn't really outline any specific types of uses necessarily. I'll go over that a little bit later. There are utilities that have capacity for this project in the area. It is 2 miles from station number 1 with a 6-minute response time, and it's 2.2 miles from the nearest police station. As you know, there's 3 criteria for a conditional use permit for you to evaluate in your decision, and I can go over those if you'd like. They are listed with your motion at the end. As far as correspondence goes, there was correspondence from the building department. Code compliance talked a little bit about the weeds and those kinds of things that need to be removed before the project is built. Nampa Fire talks about the distance and the need for increased demand, which would be 0.22 firefighter positions. The police department's increased demand would be 0.33 additional officers and 0.11 additional support staff. The engineering division does not oppose this application and had a list of conditions in their comment memo. And then tonight in front of you on the desk, there is a paper copy of the letter from Matt Jameson in our CDBG coordinator in support of this project. As she stated, this is for 74 dwelling units. It will provide landscaping, parking, and open space areas to the residents. This is just an example of what the structure might look like and the colors that are being proposed. It is in the comprehensive plan as commercial, however, it is adjacent to the high-density residential. So even though we're not necessarily rezoning this property currently, I just wanted to show you this to give you some context as to the appropriateness of the location. As far as schools go, Nampa High School is 475 feet away. South Middle School is less than a half a mile away, and Sherman Elementary School is 1.5 miles away. They are required to have qualified open space of 5%. The applicant has indicated that there would be 30% open space, which would include amenities such as playgrounds, park gathering space, and a community room with kitchen and laundry facilities. Our parking code has changed, and so there will need to be a full breakdown of units with their building permit for us to further evaluate that against the parking code, but they will have to meet those codes. 74 units would require an estimated 148 parking spaces. 160 spaces are provided, with 74 of them covered and with 6 ADA spaces. So in this case, the concept plan that is provided will be part of the conditional use permit, but we will require a more fully detailed site plan, of course, for the building permit. Tonight is just basically permission for the use of the apartment building in that zone. These are the different codes that will apply to it when we actually go through the review process. It will require design review. So when you're asking about the impact on the neighbors, design review will be a portion of that, so that building's going to have to meet those codes and look pretty nice. The fence would have to as well. If you require them to put up a fence, the fence also has certain design review standards that it would have to meet. So as far as the ordinance goes that is on the property currently, it allows for uses that, so it took it out of the RP and RML zone and put it into BC, but it continued to allow for uses that were conditionally permitted or permitted in the RP and the BC zones both. In this case, this would be a conditional use permit in the BC zone. So we did not feel that it was necessary to go forward with a development agreement modification when the development agreement already outlined what's allowed. So these are the potential conditions of approval based on the comments that we received. And these are your potential motions. I will stand for any questions.
Okay, it looks like we don't have any questions, Christy. Okay, we'll go to public testimony. I have one person signed up to speak for the proposal. Bud, you want to come up and give us your name and address for the record? And
You bet. Thank you. Madam Chair, Commissioners, my name is Bud Comfer. I live in 8825 Vic Lane in Middleton. Here in support of the application. I think speaking specifically of the housing company here in Idaho, I think we have an experienced, the applicant here is very well experienced and has proven some great design as it relates to other projects they've done locally. One just recently here in Nampa. A fellow developer, I feel like they've really paid attention to the details that matter as it relates to the neighbors around them, the homes around them, and those that'll be in the units themselves. Very appealing, and certainly recommend approval. One of the things, I'm here representing NeighborWorks. We have a project actually very similar. It's a 74-unit dwelling off of Gateway. And so these are a mix of incomes as well. And what we've found as we get to be part of the neighborhood, in fact, just here in a few days, National Night Out will be hosted on our property there. And it really becomes a hub for the community. And that's what I think we desire. Similar similar impacts is that we can be part of a community. Now, I just want to say I have no interest in, I'm not part of this financially. I'm just here as an advocate for some great housing to happen and take place here in Nampa. Previously worked for Mercy Housing, who developed almost 200 houses here in the Nampa market. And some of those houses were actually rehab homes that we bought off foreclosure, rehab and resold. So real familiar with the neighborhood and love all that gets done in the Nampa market. And I don't have anything else, so just
Right.
want to thank you for the opportunity to speak.
Thank you. Is there anybody else here that would like to speak for?
Hello,
Hi.
I'm Margie Potter, a longtime Nampa resident, 1811 North Cobble Way. I'm in support of this project also. I am the chair of the Innovative Housing Solution Committee, lack of a better name, for the Region 3 Housing Coalition. You all know that we need affordable workforce housing in the area. I wanted to tell you, I used to be at the Nampa Salvation Army. I'm now at the Caldwell Salvation Army. Recently, we were awarded, at the beginning of the year, money from IHFA to help house in motels families that had lost their homes. We've expended all that money. We've done over 5,000 bed nights in Canyon County. Those are Nampa residents that lost their home and, everywhere in Canyon County. So definitely we're gonna have a bigger problem on our hands if we don't get something going. We're not going to have anybody to work in our small businesses either. So I'm sure you've all heard this before, so I'm not saying anything new, but we're fully in support of this project and committed to helping them look for, financing and other financing in the area to make up
Awesome.
that difference that they would name. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Anybody else like to speak for, against, or undecided? Give us your name and address for the record, please.
Good evening. I'm Catherine Almberg, 2627 West Champaign Drive in Eagle. I'm an advocate for affordable housing. I work for the housing company for 21 years. And we just opened, I spoke with the mayor this past week at the opening of our Canyon Terrace Apartments, which is a partnership with St. Alphonsus Hospital and the Nampa School District off Garrity in front of the hospital. And that project is 81 units, and it's filled before the doors are even open. There's such a need for workforce and affordable housing in Nampa and everywhere in the state right now. Mr. Cohue said that affordable housing looks as good or better than conventional market rate housing, and that is true because we are under strict regulatory inspections on an annual basis. And so unlike a market rate owner that can pull cash and let their property languish with deferred maintenance, we're constantly under scrutiny with inspections and such. And they're just fabulous people that live in workforce housing. I mean, there are first-year teachers, our entry-level first responders, the folks at the grocery store, et cetera, and our businesses really are struggling with retaining and hiring employees right now. So I just wanted to express my support for any type of affordable workforce housing that can possibly get done within the city of Nampa.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, I don't think there's anybody else here that wants to talk. My dad doesn't want to talk. Yeah, I don't think he has anything he wants to say, right?
I do have a question for the applicant
Okay.
if there's no one else.
Yep.
Would you mind coming back up just to answer a couple of questions? They're going to be really simple and easy. I hope. So this dwelling, all of these apartments are interior access to all the apartments? There's no exterior doors or anything like
Right.
that? Okay.
This is corridor, elevator.
Okay. And is there, other than the income, is there any other requirement that would preclude somebody from living in this particular dwelling, say criminal record, anything
Yes.
like that?
Income, criminal, and credit background checks.
Okay.
Yep.
As far as a criminal record, what would preclude somebody from,
Felonies, misdemeanors.
Yes, both, but, you know,
is it on a case-by-case?
it is mostly stringent. We do have some set-aside units. There's a few units in this property. I believe we have 3. We're not, well, yeah, we're not doing permanent supportive housing in this one. We do have some other developments that have permanent supportive housing where we would be more flexible for a few units in that area. But this is really focused on workforce housing, and so we have specific criminal background check requirements. I don't have all the details here,
But there is some criteria there that
and
would.
yeah, anything that, especially anything that would harm the health and welfare of their neighbors would be a denial.
I only had 2.
Well, just to carry on a little bit more from that one, excessive DUIs, would that be, I mean, people that are habitually drunk, if you have excessive DUIs, it means you've done it more than once.
That's only why you're driving, though.
Well, but it's a behavior. If your behavior is such when you're,
Well, I think it's difficult to answer questions like that very detailed. When you have criteria, it does come on a case-by-case basis, because not all felonies are the same, not all
Right.
misdemeanors are the same.
Exactly, that's why.
So it really does. So I think when you start getting into the details of what the actual crime is, that's going to be difficult to answer. And I apologize if I
No,
stepped in
it's
front of you on
okay.
the
And
response.
I'm just not the property management expert who does all the screening, so and it is definitely, there's so many different scenarios. But at the end of the day, we pride ourselves in having a living environment that is safe for everyone to live there.
And that's what I wanted to hear. I
Plan
think
on
that's what we
having
wanted to hear.
kids living in this property, so it's especially important. Yeah, and sorry about my confusion on the permanent supportive housing. I'm having merge in my head right now, too many things going on. And when we initially submitted our CDBG application, we did have a few and we took them out. So I think, you know, to the extent that anyone is interested in looking at a copy of our lease agreement and our screening requirements, I can get anyone the specifics as well. Yeah. Anything else?
Maybe you don't have an answer for this, but with it being so close to NNU, are you anticipating a lot of students? Could you see it just becoming student housing rather than workforce housing, or
So
do you care? Or?
Yeah, we do have to be careful with that. The tax credits actually the tax credits have been around since the 80s, and they figured out pretty quickly that we don't want this to become a way to fund student housing. It was not really the intention of it. And so there are limitations on students. Essentially, it has to be a non-traditional student, so maybe a student that's a parent, you know, with kids, that sort of thing, not your 18, 19, 20-year-old traditional student.
Okay, so if just a typical recent high school graduate NNU student came to you, you would just say, sorry, this isn't for you?
It would be part of the screening guidelines has specific language about the student.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, anything else? Okay, thank you.
Student status. All right.
Okay, I'd entertain a motion to close public hearing.
so moved.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to close public hearing. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thanks.
Okay, I think it sounds pretty exciting. And I think it's in a good location.
It really is in a good location. It's on,
Right by McDonald's.
yeah. I mean, you
Well,
can't pick a better
Walmart's down the
location than
road,
McDonald's.
the schools are close. It kind of hits all the,
Yeah, it's not in a grocery desert,
no,
food desert, isn't that what they call it?
right?
you know, out on Garrity, that seems to be, well, that's closer to Whiteco anyways, but nonetheless, I think it's a great location. And it's set back off of the road too, off of 12th Avenue, which I think is good.
I think, yeah, it's a perfect project.
Somebody want to make a motion?
Yeah.
Are you gonna do another one soon, hopefully? More?
Let's get this one finished first.
We'll take as many of these as you can do, I think. I don't know.
Those 6 stories.
That's just my opinion, but.
Yeah.
Well, Madam Chair, I move to approve the conditional use permit for the multiple family residential in a BC zoning district to include 74 dwelling units for the core at 12th Avenue Road, 203 and 211 East Florida, 1224 South Nectarine, and 200 East Hawaii for the housing company with all conditions listed in the staff report.
Second.
Okay, it's been approved and seconded to approve the CUP. All those in favor?
Aye.
Oh, my brain. Any opposed? Okay, I'm going to read you my spiel here. Conditional use permits approved by the Planning and Zoning Commission will become effective 15 calendar days from the date of this hearing unless an appeal has been filed with the Planning and Zoning Department with the appropriate fee. No action should be taken by the applicant on a CUP until the appeal period has concluded. The applicant must confirm with Planning and Zoning staff there have been no appeals. And that's it. We're adjourned.